Dear YouTubers, welcome to Istanbul. This is Real Turkey channel, and I'm loving and NFL football fan presenter Atilla Yeşilara. Today, I feel myself compelled to talk about the reconversion of Hagia Sophia, a monumental Byzantine cathedral that was converted into a mosque by Fatih, the conqueror who, as the name implies, conquered Constantinople, and eventually the city was renamed today's Istanbul. And indeed, Hagia Sophia was used as a mosque, in particular by the emperors in days of symbolic significance, but in 1934, by a cabinet decree, which cabinet had been overseen by founder father Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, it was converted into a museum. And up until now, it remained a museum. And then suddenly the Turkish High Appellate Court ruled on a complaint by some Islamist charity that it ought to be a museum. It accepted the complaint, and then President Erdogan decided to reopen it as a mosque on 24th of July. After this background, I really don't give a darn whether Hagia Sophia is a mosque or a museum, and I will prove to you that most Turks don't care one way or other. To us, it is a museum because if you have ever visited Hagia Sophia, it's covered with priceless Orthodox relics, and it gives you just such a feeling of in tune with the eternity and ancient civilizations that the feelings you need to pray in a mosque or any other temple are simply not present there. I mean, you're just awed by the gorgeous architecture and the splendid architectural skills of the Byzantines. But I felt compelled simply because there has been so many articles, both in Turkish press and Western press, lamenting the loss of Hagia Sophia, claiming that this marks the end of a secular Turkey, and it marks Erdogan's unstoppable control or unbridled control of Turkey, that Erdogan is the undisputable master of Turkish politics. All of these points, by the way, are completely wrong. Therefore, I want to explain to you how the Turkish people feel about the conversion of Hagia Sophia to a mosque, whether Turkey is really becoming a more pious and devout Muslim country, and at the end, why Erdogan bothered to do that. To be perfectly honest with you, let me give you the conclusion immediately. This is the last bullet of Mr. Erdogan, who has run out of solutions to the economic distress and to the never-ending COVID-19 pandemic, so he is trying to get the Islamist votes back. Another prediction by your truly: the first prayers will be held on 24th of July, and on 25th of July, no one will ever visit that mosque, and the whole issue will be forgotten, simply because if anyone has visited Istanbul, they would know that Hagia Sophia is located in the old city, which is chock full of monumental Ottoman mosques, which have established established denominations who are used to go there for prayer, and above and beyond, really no one lives there anymore. Turkish people has long turned the place over to tourist hotels and souvenir shops, so it's very unlikely that anyone will ever go to Hagia Sophia to pray. I mean, the huge, splendid and white elephant mosque built by President Erdogan on the Asian side of Istanbul on Çamlıca Hill is mostly vacant. Most Turkish mosques are vacant. People have lost their faith in the Turkish religion. Indeed, this is why the video is titled Turkey Losing Her Religion. Let's show some proof. Unfortunately, some of these documents that I'm going to present are in Turkish, but they are first for my reading aid because I have the memory of a goldfish and I don't have a written text in front of me or a prompter. Two, for those who care, they can verify the accuracy of my statements by taking a picture of the photo and showing it to the experts. First of all, let me prove to you that really no one in Turkey cares one way or other. This is from Metropole Survey Agency's June survey. Let me just put it here. And it poses the question, what do you think is the purpose of bringing up the subject of opening Hagia Sophia for prayer at this time? 43.8% of the respondents to the survey say it's just to change the subject. Only 29.5% want to see it as a mosque. But if you look at the next arguments, which is to create an argument that the government wants to use to influence early elections, you would see that a majority of Turkish people are against the reconversion of Hagia Sophia. And let me add something. This is a personal thought, of course. I can't prove it. Hagia Sophia was in no one's mind when a pollster confronts you on the street or knocks at your door and asks you a question. You say, oh, yeah, it's an important subject. I should have an idea on that. And then, you say the first thing that comes to the top of your mind. Clearly, this is the way I felt. I mean, when I first heard that Hagia Sophia was to be converted to a mosque, I said, yeah, that's probably important. And I should have a firm view on where I stand. Where I stand is it's a despicable act that would contribute to clash of civilizations and stoke hatred of Muslims abroad. And Mr. Erdogan has done a great disfavor to his nation and to his religion by taking this step. Now, so clearly, no one cares. Is it true that even if Hagia Sophia is only symbolic, under Erdogan, Turkey has become more Islamic, more pious, more devout? Exactly the opposite. I'll show you two polls, both dated 2019. I don't think they were repeated in 2020, which clearly demonstrate that thanks to AKP's forced Islamization of the society, people are feeling more secular than ever. Here we go. This is from Optimar, polling agency, conducted in late 2019, and Optimar is openly pro-AKP. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not claiming that their surveys are biased. It's just that they express firmly pro-AKP opinions when they are asked their opinions on public issues. The question, let me translate for you, is how would you define your political identity? 25% said, I'm an Atatürkist. That is, I follow the path of founding father Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. 22% say milliyetçi, which is usually translated as nationalist, but it could very well mean patriotic. That is, upholding the values of the nation, the founding fathers, etc., etc. Well, on the sad side, Democrats are only 11%, but look at the two last columns of this survey, where people who define themselves as pious or religious or observant are only 7.8% of the population. The last column answers the last column is the number or proportion of those who openly define themselves as Islamist. And yeah, Sharia is a big problem in Turkey. Only 4.5% of the respondents to this survey declare themselves Islamists. So, add Islamists to observant or pious, it is 12.5%, something like that. The rest of Turkey doesn't have much to do with political Islam or Islam at all. You may say, one poll doesn't make a spring. I agree with you, so I'm going to show you another one. This is by Conda, sort of like anaconda, but without the ana, and it's not a snake. It is the allegedly most accurate forecaster in Turkey, and I think it's a reputation mostly well-deserved. That too is religious attitude survey conducted in late 2019. Allow me to read the transition or evolution of the Turkish society. Among the young generation, the proportion of those who fast in the holy month of Ramadan had dropped from 74% to 58%. Those who say, I pray 5 times a day, or I pray regularly, I observe religious rituals regularly, have dropped from 27 to 24%. Even though Mr. Erdogan has made it his motto to urge the young people to marry as early as possible and to have at least 3 children, Turkey's youth is marrying later, and an increasing portion of them prefer not to get married at all. The next column says, just like Optimark claims, if they ask their political or national identity, fewer people claim they are pious or religious. The next item is very interesting. Thanks to AKP, those who define themselves atheists have soared from 1% to 4% over the 10 years. Now you might say, well, 1%, 4%, who cares? Now you got to understand, in Turkey's heavily monitored, eavesdropped, Big Brother society, uncomfortable questions are usually answered with lies. A lot of pollsters ask people how often they consume alcohol, and the answer is, God, I never touched alcohol, it's a sin. And everybody has become a home distiller. So I would multiply this ratio of atheists from 4 to 8%, and which is pretty significant. Finally, of course, you know, the Islamic headscarf, which is an expression of faith and ought to be allowed in public space as well as in state service. I fully support a woman's right to wear whatever she wants to, whether it's a miniskirt or a cross over her neck or a turban, a headscarf. But those women who use the headscarf regularly have dropped, again, this is over 10 years, from 57 to 58% to 50%. There, you know, on your face. I can cite many such surveys, such as the one with Gezici, trying to understand the attitudes of the millennials and Z generation. They're everywhere. They don't really care. I mean, they may be Islam, they may be Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, Orthodox. They just don't think they have a religious identity. They are extremely tolerant, not only towards religion and sect, that's denomination, but also to LGBT and race and gender. They're wonderful. You know, Turkey's hope is the young generation. We can see that Turkey is rapidly distancing itself from overt expressions of Islamism, and in fact from regular observation of Muslim rituals, by the fact that the Imam Hatip schools, these are religious or parochial schools, are poorly attended. They have an occupancy ratio of less than 50%. AKP has used the schools to forcefully teach or indoctrinate the young people in Sunni Muslim. Many of them are abandoning school. Instead of going to an Imam Hatip or parochial school, they refuse to go to school. And many parents now shy away from sending their children to these Imam Hatip schools, not because they're against religion or anything, but Imam Hatip schools provide relatively poor education as judged by the scores of those who take the centralized college entrance exams. Among all universities and disciplines, Imam Hatip graduates have the lowest enrollment rate and the lowest scores. So that too has been another failure in social engineering. So doesn't AKP notice these points? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Nowadays, President Erdogan lives in an echo chamber or in a bunker surrounded by, extremely loyal confidants who only tell him what he wants to hear. But he has a purpose in doing these. As the Metropole claimed, people are extremely unhappy about the economic stagnation and the fact that COVID doesn't go away. I mean, officially, daily cases are down to 1,000, but I collect data from provinces. It appears that the infections have moved from 3 major cities throughout Anatolia, and you find clusters of infections in the strangest places, like in a remote village of Black Sea town, Trabzon, Eskişehir, in the Kurdish provinces of Diyarbakir, mixed province of one at the Iranian border, and Syrian border cities of Gaziantep and Urfa. So, my personal opinion, I can't prove it. I think Turkey is tampering with the corona data. Why would they do that? Because unless coronavirus cases drop to, say, 2 figures, to teens, EU would not lift the travel ban, and EU tourists probably spent 6 to 7 billion euros in Turkey and rescue the tourism season. Today, EU extended travel ban to Turkey and other countries for another 2 weeks, which means that hope has gone out of the window. But the slide I'm going to show to you is our conversion of April unemployment survey to encompass those who have been temporarily laid off from their workplaces and thus do not seek jobs. According to international definition, people who don't seek jobs are not unemployed. They are outside the labor force. Therefore, they are not included in the official definition of unemployment. Based on this methodology, Turkey's unemployment rate is only 12.8% as of April, but it also covers May data. If you add to that those who have been laid off and receiving some but very little state aid, and those who have been temporarily put on furlough with the hope of returning to work sometime soon, you would see, this is the very bottom column, the leftmost row. The broad unemployment ratio, dear viewers, is 24.3%. That is a disaster. That means 1/4 of the population have no jobs, are willing to work, but there is no work for them, and the compensation they receive is about 60% of the minimum wage. Now, you tell me whether a government presiding over a country like that would like economy to be discussed. Since economics used to be the strongest suit of Mr. Erdogan, he essentially formed one of the most extensive and expensive welfare systems in the world, the envy of Scandinavian states as far as I'm concerned, and turned Turkey's poor, which is roughly 20% according to World Bank and United Nations definitions, into clients. They don't see the in-kind and cash aid they receive from the state as an entitlement, but as a gift from Mr. Erdogan. Another thing that really annoys Mr. Erdogan is that the recipients are slowly moving to CHP and other parties. This is also from Gezici poll, not my personal opinion, simply because they realize that the new CHP or opposition mayors are as good as looking after them. So there are many reasons why Mr. Erdogan wants economy not to be discussed. he hopes that over the summer, Turkish economy will return to normal. It won't. Let me show you another chart. This too is, I'm sorry, it's in Turkish, but it is May retail sales data. There are other data from May, and I don't want to bias my data selection. For instance, industrial production is moving up rapidly, but that's understandable, and that happens everywhere in the world. I mean, when you open an economy, industrial production returns to normal or pre-pandemic levels pretty quickly. What seems to be lacking is the desire or power to purchase, to consume. This is why I prefer to work with the retail sales indices. These are volume indices. They're corrected for inflation. And you see the size of the blip in May. This is the entire retail. This is core. I'm sorry. This is not core retail. This is retail less food. So you can't see it. The retail sales increased by 3.8 percentage points month on month in May, whereas May industrial production soared by 19%, which tells you that because of unemployment, the consumption side of the economy is not doing well. And I'm sure if you follow the economy, where this kind of vicious cycle leads to, companies produce, but wholesalers and retailers can't sell them. So companies reduce production, lay off more workers, which adds to the unemployment, which in a second round further reduces domestic consumption. That's the position where Turkey is, simply because just like in the United States, even though most bars and cafes and restaurants and hotels are open, a significant proportion of the nation, which is afraid of being infected, simply doesn't visit them. So consumption is not picking up. And as I've said, tourists are not coming. So tourism indirectly, including the upstream industries, used to generate 10 to 13% of Turkish GDP. Estimates differ, but this year it will make no contribution whatsoever. So Mr. Erdogan's hope that he could divert the agenda by reconverting Hagia Sophia backfired too, simply because the economy won't recover over the summer months. And finally, you may wish to ask, well, all is fine, but is AKP really losing votes? Is AKP really losing votes? Because if you read the Western press, Mr. Erdogan is just the undisputed king, the emperor of Turkey. Here is, and this is in English, I collect polls regardless of the reputation of the pollster or its political orientation, and I average them. This is the polls after raw data or undecideds and protest votes are distributed among parties. Look at AKP. It has dropped to 38.2% after adding its share of undecideds. And its ally in parliament, MHP, has dropped to 10%. The total of two is 48%. You might say, well, that's not bad. Well, remember, in the last general elections, their total vote were 52%, and Mr. Erdogan was also elected president in 52%. If you assume that this poll of polls is reflective of the underlying voter behavior, then Mr. Erdogan would have a very tough race to regain the presidency, and his AK party and its nationalist ally MHP would lose the majority in the parliament. And that shows you the true dilemma of Mr. Erdogan. As I was saying in the beginning, Hagia Sophia was Mr. Erdogan's last bullet. It didn't change the polls. It didn't change Turkey's economic fortunes. It did nothing but increase the hatred towards Muslims abroad. And Turkey will pay for that. Muslims will pay for that. And I don't know when there will be elections, but when there's elections, Mr. Erdogan will pay for his mistake. Okay, well, this is the end of our broadcast. If you liked it, vote for Green Bay. Yeah, I lived in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Okay, so give me a break. If you like this, share it with people who might be interested in Turkey for one reason or other. And stay home and stay safe, please. Bye bye now. This is Attila Yeşilara from Real Turkey Channel checking out. Okay, I suppose I should check out here to show my face. This is Attila Yeşilara saying goodbye from Istanbul.